while, I get into engaged in a conversation out in the newsroom or somewhere else, and I forget that I have a radio show to do, and that happened today. I was just chatting with Griff and Mike and Caroline, and then I heard the familiar chime, and I thought I need to get in the studio and get on the air. And as I was walking in, Vanessa was like, "What the hell is wrong with Todd? Where are you, Todd?" And here I am. There you go. Sorry, folks. Sorry for my tardiness. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job, as always. Dan's shaking his head there. Everybody's shaking their head at Todd. I know. You got one job to do, bud, and that's sit behind the mic at 10 o'clock. Be there. That's priority one, not your stupid conversation with other people. I apologize. Anyway, lots and lots to get to today, of course. Provincial politicians took aim at Nova Scotia Power, saying the utility owes ratepayers answers after that cybersecurity breach gave thieves access to data belonging to 280,000 customers. When all is said and done, folks, when all is said and done, will anything actually be done? Will Nova Scotia Power be held accountable in any way? And what does accountability look like to you? What would satisfy you when it comes to this whole issue? Job losses? Ratepayers getting reimbursed to some degree? I don't know what we could expect out of any of this. Probably when all is said and done, Nova Scotia Power is just going to wait this out. They're going to take the blowback for now, and they realize that when at the end of the day, nothing can actually happen, and nothing will happen, and we will be left with this to deal with it on an individual level. That is sadly what's going to come of this. I don't know what else can come of this. Political grandstanding at the Public Accounts Committee is look, I support that. It gives people a chance to vent and vicariously through politicians. But what tangibly comes of it, I don't know anything will. Unfortunately, again, I don't know why the questions aren't being asked about how much investment the company has put into cybersecurity. But prior to this, and what are they doing to beef up their security? I haven't heard those questions asked. Again, I'd love to chat with Peter Gregg. I'm going to be a broken record here and say that we put numerous requests in to chat with the CEO of Nova Scotia Power, Peter Gregg, and they have not responded or just plain out said no, not interested. Maybe he doesn't want to answer tough questions. I don't know. But anyway, these are some things that you can talk about later on in the show. Also, I saw this story on the CTV website, and it's something that Gloria McCluskey, of course, you all know Gloria, has raised this concern. Bird Canada has brought 300 e-scooters and 200 e-bikes to the Halifax region and says in the first 20 days, these devices have received more usage here than when the company first introduced them to other cities. They say it's record-breaking in terms of initial usage. A Bird Canada Canadian company has a goal of getting people out of their vehicles. And they hope to also grow the usage north of Highway 102 into Burnside, but for now they're taking things slow. Anyone can use these scooters, but there are rules. Definitely should be used, according to the company, using the road and all bike infrastructure, not on the sidewalk. In fact, you are riding on the sidewalk. We can tell. They have devices and sensors on these units that can tell whether or not they've been used or where they are. So my question to you folks is that what are your thoughts on this? Because, look, I see these scooters and people flying around on them, weaving in and out of traffic, not paying any attention to the rules of the road, and in some cases not wearing helmets. And I think this is extremely dangerous activity that is not being properly monitored. And I think that it's something that the municipality needs to look at, because I think that there's a lot of concern about public safety with these things. I really do. Anyone can rent them and get on them and jump on them, and away you go flying down the road. And they are all over the place. They're weaving in and out of traffic, weaving in and out of bike lanes, onto sidewalks. And I see it as a serious public safety issue potentially. And as Gloria has mentioned, they park them on the sidewalks. And I'd like to know what type of arrangement they have when it comes to a business arrangement with the municipality. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? This is something else that you can talk about. I've got other things in the pile as well. As mentioned, we'll open the phone lines in about an hour's time. Hope to hear from many of you. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening. We appreciate it very much. Now joining us is Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab, also known, of course, as the Food Professor. Sylvain, welcome to the show, my friend, as always.
Good morning, Todd. If you were running late, nobody noticed, really. I mean, it's maybe you out of breath.
That's right. Yeah. As I rushed in,
nobody noticed. So there you go.
Okay, there you go. I blew my cover. So next time I'll just do it and not let anybody know.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Listen, an interesting release that you put out, and it's where's the beef priced out of the Canadian grill, and this is something that is. People are feeling the impacts, and you talk to people anecdotally, and they'll tell you that beef has gone up, but you've got empirical data which backs that up, right?
Oh, absolutely. Now, of course, in Eastern Canada, including here in Nova Scotia, I think we're heading for some great weather, finally,
yeah.
And people will start thinking about barbecuing, of course. I mean, a lot of people have been barbecuing already, but I think things will intensify in weeks to come, which is great. However, my goodness, I mean, there's something going on at the meat counter that honestly I can't explain. So if you look at the data that was released by StatsCan this week, strip loin cuts are up 34% since January. Okay. Top sirloin cuts, 33%. Rib cuts, 12%. Ground beef. I mean, ground beef is really the most accessible, affordable bovine protein out there. That's up 7% since January. And you may think, I thought at first, well, there's a North American context. There's just herd sizes are way down, both in Canada and the United States. Right now, our herd size is the same as it was back in 1989, with 15 million more Canadians. So you would think, and in America, in the United States, prices are going up as well. Yeah. But here's the thing, Todd. Yeah. Prices are rising much faster here in Canada and in the U.S. And typically, yes, food is a little bit more expensive, especially at the meat counter in Canada. But typically, when prices move upwards, they move in lockstep with the U.S. Not this time. So ground beef in Canada is getting way more expensive, much more so than in the U.S., for example, and same for the cuts. So I do question exactly what is going on here.
Okay, why do you question what's going on here? What leads you to speculate?
Funny you ask.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you saw my op-ed. I do think that there is another possibility other than, of course, climate change and producers leaving the industry, selling out or selling off and growing other things. I do think that there is some potential in collusion here within the packing industry, not retail, packing. And this is something that Americans have actually addressed under the former president, Joe Biden. If you remember, 3 years ago, he went after meat packers like GBS and Tyson and Cargill and National Beef. They've all, within months, they've all had to collaborate with the White House during this investigation, only to see a few players writing checks. It's GBS, a large Brazilian conglomerate, which actually operates a facility right here in Canada, in Alberta, didn't admit guilt, but wrote a $83.5 million check to the government so consumers can be compensated. And it's been going on for 3 years. And so there's more pressure put on packers in the U.S., and I do wonder if it's not the time here in Canada to do the same through the Canadian Bureau.
Okay, so collusion, just to be clear here, you're not talking about retailers. We're talking about at what part of the continuum is the collusion happening, just to be clear here, in your opinion?
So with retailers, the advantage that we have as Canadians with retailers is that all of these companies are public. You can actually look at margins.
Yeah.
The problem we have in Canada with beef packing in particular is that you have three main facilities basically processing 85% of all the beef consumed in Canada.
Wow.
And that would be Cargill in Guelph, Cargill in Alberta, and GBS in Alberta. And that's it. All two companies, GBS and Cargill, are private companies. We do not have access to their margins, or you couldn't tell whether or not they're exaggerating with beef sales and margins. That's the problem we have. So is there collusion in the system? It is a possibility, but it would be in packing, not necessarily in retailing.
Yeah, and you say Cargill has two facilities, and who is the other one again? Who owns the other one?
GBS is a monster of a company based out of Brazil. So they operate facilities all over the world,
right,
including right here in Canada and Alberta.
Okay, so sorry, Sylvain. So the potential collusion would be amongst Cargill and GBS. Is that what you're saying?
McDonald's U.S. sued all these companies.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it was settled out of court.
Wow.
In the United States.
Yeah.
So this is a problem, and frankly, I'm concerned because a lot of people are listening to us right now, and they consume beef, and they've been sticker shocked. I've been sticker shocked myself. I don't know if you eat beef yourself.
Absolutely, yes, 100%. It's brutal.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
And so I get that things are getting more expensive, but right now, as a lab at Dalhousie University, there is a portion of the price increase that we cannot explain.
And hence the speculation of collusion.
That's right. So we're not accusing packers of colluding, but there's certainly some symptoms there for sure.
Wow. Okay. So what about the...
And this has been brewing on for many years, and a lot of people have speculated that. And of course, many people will be quick at pointing fingers at retailers.
Yeah.
Margins at the meat counter are always anywhere between 35 to 45%.
That's a healthy margin, though. Would you not agree?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. But that's really typical. But up the food chain, if you talk to farmers, they'll tell you, I mean, they're getting good money for their product, for their animals, but they're not getting the same amount of profits as packers. Packers are, and that's exactly what happened during Mad Cow in 2003. Margins went way up in packing, but nobody had access to the data because they're privately owned companies.
How about workers and employees working for these packers? Are they benefiting from some of this growth, or is it just the owners?
It's mostly foreign workers, Todd.
Yeah, there you go. So, wow, that's exploitation.
No, it's a really obscure part of the supply chain that concerns me right now. But what concerns me most is that because of that obscure part of the supply chain, consumers may be paying more for what they should be paying for beef. And this is barbecue season. I think it's time to actually raise this issue right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have foreign workers. That would have to be justified, would it not, as to why they would need temporary foreign workers?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Now, again, these companies are not necessarily accountable towards the Canadian public. They are foreign-owned. Cargill is American. GBS is Brazilian. Yeah. And so they come in, they invest, and they process beef we eat as Canadians. But at the end of the day, I certainly hope that the Canadian Competition Bureau will look into this. It has more power now. Last Parliament gave the Bureau more authority to get into the data, get into these privately owned companies. I think it's time to do that.
So we've got foreign-owned companies producing and potentially colluding with each other and hiring temporary foreign workers, paying low wages and probably having subsidized wages as well. And meanwhile, we are paying sky-high prices for beef here at the counter. I mean, this is something that needs to be addressed in a timely way, in my opinion.
So, listen, Todd. Some cuts are $70 a kilo.
Wow.
$70 a kilo. That is not even close to what we're seeing right now in the U.S. Even with the conversion. And so, I certainly. Something is going on. So Canada is going in one direction, and America is going in another. And the difference is that some leadership in America decided to look into this matter, and nobody's doing that in Ottawa right now.
Why? Why is that? Just too many other things to distract you with too much time?
Well, it's effort, and of course you have to dig deeper. And these companies have a lot of money. Cargill and GBS, both companies represent billions and billions and billions of dollars of sales. They're even larger than Loblaw and Sobeys combined. I mean, these are massive multinationals.
My gosh.
So you're tackling a big beast here.
Yeah, for sure. And what about the producers, the farmers themselves? You talked about fewer head of cattle being produced?
Well, they've been complaining for years. They know something is up.
Yeah.
But you need some political will to make some changes. So obviously, farmers they're price takers, so they don't necessarily set prices. The market is certainly favorable to them right now, but it's not going to last forever. The problem is that if, let's say, for example, prices go down. For them, farmers, I bet you prices won't go down for us.
No, that's right.
Because of what's going on in packing.
Yeah. Okay, Sylvain, fantastic as always. And this information's all available on your website, I'm assuming?
Absolutely.
How to direct people to that website, please?
Yes, it's dal.ca/agri-food. So there you go.
Okay, you always feeling hungry after our segments for whatever reason.
Well, sometimes when I show up, I actually bring donuts.
You do.
So next time I'll do that. I'll bring a steak next time.
Oh my gosh! Oh wow, my mouth is watering already. Thanks, Sylvain.
All right, take care.
All right, take care. Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director, Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. All right, removing the GST from intercity bus and rail fares would be a climate-friendly, simple, and practical way to benefit lower and middle-income Canadians. This when we come back. Removing the GST from intercity bus and rail fares would be a climate-friendly, simple, and practical way to benefit lower and middle-income Canadians, according to Transport Action Atlantic. Joining us to talk about all of this is Ted Bartlett, past President, Advocate, Transport Action Atlantic. Ted, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good to talk to you again, Todd.
All right, so
and we're talking HST here rather than just the GST, which in the case of Nova Scotia would be now 14% off the price of a bus or train ticket. Which for the target demographic here, people who really can't afford the burden of owning their own car. And who use public transportation, the intercity buses, which is really like public transit on provincial highways, or the passenger train where it's available, albeit on a badly reduced schedule at the moment, they would benefit directly from this. In Nova Scotia case, 14% off the price of the ticket. For people in the low-income demographic, which the new government of Canada is intent on helping, it's a significant saving. It's not to be sneezed at, and it's very easily done.
Has this been done anywhere in Canada?
No, it hasn't. But you know how easy it was to take, albeit temporarily, the HST off a wide variety of goods and services back in November.
Sure.
Essentially, the federal government waved a magic wand, didn't even consult with the provinces. We're not advocating that they not consult with the provinces this time, but still, it's something that's not difficult to do. It's not going to make a big dent in the revenue pot for either Ottawa or the province of Nova Scotia.
Yeah. So who would champion this? Obviously, it would require a politician at the provincial or federal level. Who might be a champion of this?
Well, we're hoping that some of the newly elected or re-elected MPs would be championing this. We're reaching out to them at this point, and we'll try to stay focused on Nova Scotia here. We had a fairly wide-ranging agenda that we've reset at our annual general meeting last weekend. So, looking at Nova Scotia issues, one, of course, is passenger rail. The big problem with passenger rail is not geographically within Nova Scotia, but it certainly affects the province. The track in northern New Brunswick that the tri-weekly ocean train traverses on its way from Halifax to Montreal is in atrocious condition. The train is slowed to a crawl because the right-of-way has been allowed to deteriorate. Back 150 years ago, the Intercolonial Railway, as it was then called, which linked the Maritimes with central Canada, it was the bait, if you wish, that brought the Maritimes into Confederation. It was a nation-building project, and now it's time for a little nation rebuilding on that line because it's been allowed to deteriorate shamefully over the last 30 years. And CN owns the line,
right,
but they don't use it very much for freight purposes. It's not their primary route for bulk or intermodal traffic between Halifax and Montreal. The main tenant is Via's passenger train, and quite frankly, it's not, I guess, in the best interests of CN's shareholders to sink a lot of money into it. So we think it falls to the government of Canada to take the initiative here because it's part of our national infrastructure.
Yeah, and of course, with the move to get people out of vehicles and to green our economy and all that goes with it, it makes sense that would get the attention of a Crown Corp like Via Rail, right?
Right, indeed, Todd. And there are two other planks in that Via platform. Number one is you fix the track. And then the train can run on schedule. Yeah. Then you've got to restore the bus connections to places that aren't directly served by rail, like Fredericton and Charlottetown and New Glasgow, Cape Breton, so that the buses will connect with the train and make it useful. Then you've got to restore the daily service that we had up to 2012, and it was taken away by a non-caring former CEO of Via who couldn't see beyond Quebec City.
Right, Ted, Maritime Bus, Mike Cassidy, Maritime Bus, they seem to me to be a pretty robust company.
Yeah, and they run pretty reliable schedules, but Via doesn't.
Yeah, that's right.
And therein lies the problem. There's a good revenue potential for Maritime Bus if Via was able to run its trains in a timely fashion, because connecting passengers would be using the bus.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, there's one other, before we run out of time here, there's one other Nova Scotia issue that wasn't mentioned in our media release, and that's the long neglected and presently dormant rail line through Cape Breton. Premier Houston is very bullish on offshore wind energy, and to me that means there's potential for clean, heavy industry back in the Sydney area. Years ago, it used to be referred to as industrial Cape Breton, but it really isn't anymore. And for there to be a resurgence in heavy industry in Cape Breton, clean heavy industry powered by offshore wind for the most part, there has to be a reliable rail connection. and that disused rail line's just been sitting there deteriorating. It could be restored. There was a cost estimate done a few years ago. I can't remember exactly what the figure was now, but it certainly wasn't ridiculous when you compare it to the cost of twinning highways. So the Nova Scotia government decided last year, for reasons that aren't particularly clear to us, that they would stop paying the owner just to keep the tracks in place. Now, the tracks haven't been removed yet. There's been no application to remove them, as we understand it. But at this point in Canada's history, it would be folly to tear up a part of the national rail infrastructure and pretty well close the door on any resurgence of heavy industry in Cape Breton. So, again, we're calling on Canada to step in here and do what it promised to do.
Right.
Back in the mid-'90s, when CN was still a federal crown corporation, its president promised the Premier of Nova Scotia that if the spun-off short line railroad failed to make ends meet, there would be a guarantee of continued service to the Sydney area.
Right.
Well, of course, it hasn't happened.
Right.
And just because the government of the day decided to privatize CN, that doesn't let the federal government off the hook.
Right.
The president of the Crown Corporation, CN, was an agent of the government of Canada at that time. And that pledge still stands as far as we're concerned.
Okay, Ted, out of time. Thanks as always. Appreciate it, and we'll do it again.
Always a pleasure, Todd.
Okay, take care. Ted Bartlett, past president, advocate, Transport Action Atlantic. As mentioned, provincial politicians grilled Nova Scotia Power executives yesterday. We'll chat with Derek Mombourquette when we come back. All right. Nova Scotia Power CEO and other staff were grilled at the Public Accounts Committee yesterday about how the cyber breach happened and what the company will do to protect its customers from financial harm. Joining us to talk about all this is Derek Mombourquette, Liberal MLA, interim leader of the Liberal Party in Nova Scotia. Derek, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me on again. Appreciate it.
All right. So, kind of broad strokes thoughts on yesterday and what happened in public accounts. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, it was important to have them in. This has been followed really by thousands of people who've been impacted and their families. So really light on the answers. There were some big themes that came out of it when it came to, why Nova Scotia Power was maintaining people's social insurance numbers in their database. 140,000 social insurance numbers were compromised in the breach. Around how they're paying for the cyber attack. The CEO indicated that the company has insurance, but my concern was that ratepayers they would eventually go to the URB to recoup the cost from the ratepayers, which I completely disagree with. This is not Nova Scotians' fault. This is a breach and a mistake of Nova Scotia Power. So ratepayers shouldn't pay for it. So as I said, a lot of questions, light on answers.
Okay, so they did say that they had insurance and any overage would be paid through ratepayers, rate increases. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what they told us yesterday is that there is insurance to cover the costs associated with the cyber attack.
Yeah.
But they're not completely sure whether it will be completely covered. So, I asked the question around, well, what happens in the event that the insurance doesn't cover it? Nova Scotia Power internally should be covering that cost, not the ratepayers. So there was no commitment to go to the URB to ask for that money. What the CEO indicated yesterday in the media and in the meeting is that would be a conversation within Nova Scotia Power and its board if they got to that point.
Do you think that they understand the scope here and the depth of how angry and ticked off Nova Scotians are here at all of this?
I think so. I think so now. I think that it's been a slow process to get information out to people, which has been frustrating for everyone. I can tell you, Todd, that in my 10 years as an MLA, the letter that we sent was viewed 200,000 times alone on my own social media networks. Mm-hmm. People are really engaged in this. People are frustrated. You have hundreds of thousands of people who are impacted by it. And Nova Scotia Power has a lot of explaining to do. And they also need to really step up their game when they're trying to provide support for people. We're hearing from people that they're trying to get the credit support through the company. Nova Scotia Power sent in the letter. They can't get through. They're having a hard time getting through with Nova Scotia Power. So, we pushed that hard yesterday. Said that they need to step up their game. They need to come clean on why they were keeping social insurance numbers, and they really got to step up to help people.
And the timeline as well, when the breach happened and until they realized it. What about that? What about the timeline and the lapse?
Yeah, well, that's a concern for us too as well, and essentially, the CEO, because yesterday I asked the question around the timeline and when the government was notified, and they committed to providing a timeline as they get through their investigation. There are certain things that they didn't want to get into yesterday because it still is an active investigation, but it's important. It's important for Nova Scotians to find out what happened. It's important for Nova Scotians to find out the timeline, find out why, if their social insurance number was compromised, why Nova Scotia Power was keeping that information, and what further supports may be there to support families that may be impacted.
Yeah, and also, why just TransUnion? Did anybody ask that question when we know that Equifax and TransUnion, they're separate entities, and I think that in order, if you're going to cover people, give coverage for both of those. Was that a question asked or addressed?
So the question that was discussed yesterday was around the timing. So it wasn't whether it was Equifax or TransUnion, but some industries, we've seen breaches in other cases where there was support provided for 5 years. Nova Scotia Power indicated, of course, in their letter that TransUnion would be 2 years of protection. I think they're going to go back and look at that to see what else may be done to see if they can extend that. They haven't committed to it, but that came up yesterday as well.
Oh my gosh! I mean, they should extend it. 2 years is the problem's not going to go away in 2 years. If somebody's identity and social insurance number is floating around out there in the dark web, you need to offer protection for longer than 2 years, do you not?
Oh, absolutely. I think that they're going to have to look at a whole number of things as they go through this investigation when it comes to credit protection, when it comes to possible reimbursement for people. They really have to explain to Nova Scotians why their information was stored in their database, the information that they didn't need. The most important number people really have is the social insurance number when it comes to the things they do on a daily basis. And the big one also is that if that insurance doesn't cover the complete cost of what it's going to take to rebuild or recoup from this cyber attack, they should not go back to the ratepayers and ask for money. This is their mistake. It's not Nova Scotians. They need to step up and they need to pay that bill if it exceeds their insurance. Okay,
so how about the investment into cybersecurity before, and what are they doing to beef up cybersecurity? Do we have any details on that? Were those questions asked?
Yeah, so they got into a bit of that. They had representatives there as well from Emera on the cyber side and privacy. So, they have requests in to beef up cybersecurity. They say they invest millions a year into cybersecurity, and this breach for them is significant. Of course, this is a major breach of people's information. So, we're going to have continuous questions for them as we move forward. I don't think that's the first time that they're probably going to present in front of public accounts. I would hope that they would come back and provide a solid update as the investigation is ongoing and concludes, so Nova Scotians can get answers about what happened, what information, what support they're going to provide to Nova Scotians, and what cybersecurity measures are they putting in place to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
Okay, so they say that they've invested millions of dollars. Why not get some data, some empirical data, or I'm not sure if it can be demanded of the company to provide this, or how much authority government has to get this information. But I think just taking them at their word and throwing around where we've invested millions of dollars, that's not good enough. We need details.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and that's why. Yesterday's that's why yesterday's meeting was really that important to have them in, to have the executives answer to lawmakers and to answer to Nova Scotians about what happened, and talk about why they were keeping that information. They couldn't answer the question around social insurance numbers. That is outside of their investigation into the cyber breach. They were holding on to that information, and we could not get a clear answer on that. So there are a lot of question marks. A lot more conversation is going to have to take place, and as I said, they're really going to have to step up now to support Nova Scotians who have been impacted by this, and explain to everyone what happened and what they're going to do for the future.
Okay, so what's next here? They've appeared before public accounts. What's next?
So right at this point right now, they've appeared before public accounts. They're into an ongoing investigation. There are certain aspects, and there were some motions passed yesterday at committee around what the Auditor General in her office may have when it comes to a review of the breach and what supports are in place for Nova Scotians. So that office is going back to review any kind of role that they can play in that. We've requested as a caucus, as these final reports come out, that they're published so people can see them. But it's going to be ongoing. Like, for example, now today there is a meeting being set up with MLAs by representatives of Nova Scotia Power to talk about support for offices, because we're getting inundated. Like, people can't get through. Like, they couldn't get through to Nova Scotia Power. They couldn't get through to TransUnion. Like, they're going into their banks. There's a lot of questions, and we need to get information to people. So Nova Scotia Power has a lot of work to do. It's been a really tough time for a lot of families.
Yeah, for sure. I just hope that they just don't have the end game of kind of wait this out, crisis management 101, and eventually people will stop complaining and it'll just go away, and it'll be business as usual, and when all is said and done, nothing tangible happens. That is my concern here.
Yeah, that's mine too. And Nova Scotia Power is probably one of the largest breaches we've seen in our history. And from a political perspective and from a policy perspective, it's something that as MLAs and people who are making laws in debating this stuff in the legislature, this is going to be something that we all need to step up and look at. Like, what policies can we put in place to keep companies accountable for the information that they're storing on people who are utilizing a service or purchasing a service from someone. What can we do to beefing up laws here in the province to help protect people?
Derek, appreciate your time. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, take care. Derek Mombourquette, Liberal MLA interim leader. Again, something that some of you might want to weigh on when we open the phone lines between 11 and 12. A local news symposium aims to bring back local news. I'll chat with the co-organizer of the symposium when we come back. All right, the local news symposium aims to support local news in the Maritimes. Joining me to chat about all this is Erica Butler, co-organizer of the symposium and a local reporter with CHMA in Sackville. Erica, thanks for joining the show.
A pleasure to be here.
All right, so tell us all about the symposium coming up June 14th in Sackville.
Oh, yeah. So we're gathering, a big group of people who care about local news and care about seeing, helping it grow and be reborn in the Maritimes. We've got April Lindgren, who is a researcher who has sort of documented, like, she has created this local news map where you can kind of look over the past couple decades and see the demise of lots of small community news outlets across Canada. And also she's been watching the rebirth of it. She's been watching new outlets, or what's surviving and what kind of outlets are staying alive. So she has a really good perspective on, the big picture. And then we've got panelists coming from across the Maritimes, people like Tim Bousquet from Halifax.
Yeah.
We've got Vicky Hogarth, who's with CHCO TV in New Brunswick, a really active local news person, and they just relaunched the St. Croix Courier, which had gone out of business. They bought it. They just started printing. Their first edition is being distributed now. So people like that, people who are working in like little, local news websites, people who are studying this. We've got Tara Tyre from King's College Journalism. Joanne Roberts, a former CBC journalist, and she's a big democracy kind of proponent, and she's going to give some perspective on what it means to lose local news. Like, how does that affect your local democracy? So a lot of people there to talk about, what we're missing, like what communities need and what we miss when we lose our local news outlets. And then, hopefully we're going to talk about like what we can do to I don't know, turn it around.
Yeah, for sure. It's Teresa Blackburn, publisher manager in the River Valley Sun. I worked with Teresa, former CBC broadcaster, of course. Tim
Yes.
Bousquet, you mentioned Tim. I worked for the St. Croix Courier way back in the day. That was one of my first jobs in the business. So this hits home for me, and I recognize that how much connection communities have with local news. And I think that, yes, there's a million ways people can get news, but there's always that desire to have a grassroots connection with local news that can't be replicated, right? Obviously, you agree with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, like the thing is, in this day and age, if you rely on social media channels to get your information, it can be really dizzying because, there's just so much unreliable, outright fake or exaggerated stuff floating around, and people post stuff you don't know where it came from. The idea behind, what I see as the main purpose of local news is that it gives you some reliability, some trustworthiness around your community to say, okay, well, you have a question about who's building that building over there. Well, there's going to be a place where you can reliably find out about it. Someone who, has gone the extra couple steps to really make sure they have the goods on that, as opposed to just seeing what floats by your eyeballs as you scroll your phone. So, I think it's really important because there's reliability, and it's a trust, and it helps sense of community. It's really important. We worry about media a lot, but I really think the forgotten heroes of the problem with media right now is just the reporter. And I'm biased because I've been doing that job for 5 years now. It sounds like you've done it before, so you know what it's like.
Yeah. Well, look, it's all things local. We live and die here in talk radio. It's near and dear. You can talk about sometimes some big national issues, even international stories are the newsmakers. But generally, the people want to talk are things happening right in their community here in Halifax or in Nova Scotia, and that's the same as what you deal with your radio station and with these community newspapers and all of that. There's a narrative people to talk about what's going on in their local community that can't be replicated anywhere.
Absolutely. And, I think your listeners actually, benefit from the fact that, 95.7 exists, right? There's a lot of community. I think the thing to remember for your listeners is that there's so many communities across Canada that have nothing. Right. We're talking no reporters, no one relies on going to council meetings or hearing back, talking to local developers about what they're doing. They're, keeping tabs on the business community, keeping tabs on local politicians or, the courts. We have a dearth right now. We have the number of reporters who are out there working and doing that job, which is just a bread and butter kind of, not the sexiest kind of reporting often, but it's really vital, and I think it's important. But the number of people's job has gone down so much, and it's just total news deserts that they have no one working to help get reliable information.
And we can't rely on corporations and big companies, in my opinion, to fill the void anymore. It's not going to work that way. It's going to be grassroots, like community radio stations, like what publishers are doing, like the Examiner. I think that's what we're dealing with. What are your thoughts?
Definitely, and I think that's why. I was at actually Canadian Association of Journalists in November in Halifax and got kind of worked up about local news at that conference. But I thought I wanted to try to bring together people that was not just from the journalism community, but also community leaders to say, hey, because I was kind of realizing, if communities want to hasten the rebirth of local news, they're going to need to step up, take a role. It has to be grassroots. There's going to have to be involvement. There's cases like things being born like the Halifax Examiner. So Tim Bousquet was there, and the conditions were right in his life and his career to make it happen. You rely on a Tim Bousquet existing everywhere that it's needed, right? And so sometimes community members are going to have to get together and say, hey, what can we do to help make this happen? I'm really hoping that this symposium on June 14th in Sackville is going to come up with some ideas. I know that I've already heard from some of the panelists saying, yes, let's talk about this. Let's get some ideas going, and maybe something will come out of it. That's what my fingers are crossed for.
Yeah, and people, I think, should be, and shouldn't say should be, but I would hope would be willing, in some cases, to pay for local news through paywall.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a matter of, whether there's going to be all kinds of ideas. Like when you get a group of people who are so passionate about something in the room, not everyone's going to agree on the best way to go about it. I think one thing that I've heard April Lindgren say is that there's actually a number of ways to go about it, and they can all be successful. So we don't have to find only one way to make it work. There's going to be a number of different ways, but, each community is going to have, different strengths and weaknesses, and you have to see what works in every community. And, I think one of the things now we have good programs. I mean, I'm working in Sackville right now, by the graces of the federal government, because my station got a local journalism initiative grant to hire a local reporter. And, the local paper, went got closed down by Saltwire shortly after I moved here. And, so, I mean, it's like you never know what's going to happen. That, there are public resources in place that can help these outlets. But one thing I've noticed is that, in order for it to start, we had a community radio station here. Running a radio station is, a huge deal, as you know. And it's not something that you can just snap your fingers and create a radio station. We had that, so we were able to access this local journalism grant. But we also need to think about communities where nothing exists now, or it's disappeared 10 years ago. We live across the border from Amherst. 2013, they had daily news in Amherst, and it's gone as of 2013, and there's no reporters there. Occasionally they drive in from somewhere else to do a story, but that's a big town doing big stuff. They've got housing developments. They've got the housing crisis and the opioid crisis. They've got everything going on there. Nobody is reporting on it in a reliable, consistent way.
Very interesting. If people want to know more about the symposium, can they check it out online? Is there information online they can access?
Absolutely. We've got a website. It's bringbacklocal.news.ca.
Okay, Erica.
And all the info's there. Thanks,
sounds great. Thanks a lot. Have a great time.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Erica Butler, co-organizer of the symposium that we're talking about. And the local reporter with CHMA in Sackville, community radio station, doing great work. And good on them for paying attention to local news and for hiring somebody and accessing that federal money. What is on your mind today? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. David's call. Hello, David.
Hey, Todd. We spoke a couple days ago about Nova Scotia Power, and at that point I was waiting to hear from them what information of mine had been compromised.
Yep.
I'd never actually received that email, so I called that number up again, and the person I talked to used the word probably about 12 times, just saying that it's probably been delayed and probably due to the high volume. But, another possibility is they sent it out to the wrong person, or they don't, my information was misprocessed or something like that. But anyway, so they passed me along to Nova Scotia's customer service number, and they were able to tell me what they had on file. So what could have been compromised. So obviously name, date of birth, phone number, mailing address, email. I didn't have any banking information on file with them, but I did have my social insurance number. But apparently those were deleted about 2 or 3 years ago, but they didn't delete the backups. So, they don't know if they got the backups or not and whether or not that's been compromised. So, in my case, I have to assume that it was and move forward from there. But that means they basically have everything, everything you need to open a credit card, do whatever and stuff like that. So the big question coming away from all that is, okay, what's next? You basically have this highly critical information. I signed up for the 2 years of free credit monitoring. What else? That's it. I'm just kind of cut loose. I'm on my own. I got to figure it out. There's no sort of advice or guidance coming out, and especially when this first thing happened. one of the most basic things to do when any sort of cyber incident is like that is just change all your passwords. That's just basic thing one. And I never heard that recommendation from Nova Scotia Power. Mm-hmm. And other than just signing up for that credit monitoring service, any other kind of advice, because basically I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. That, my social insurance number's out on the dark web, or at least highly possibly it is. So.
Yeah, David, I hear your frustration. I really do, and again, I defer back to what I think probably their plan is to just wait till this all goes away, and eventually people will stop clamoring about it, and it'll be business as usual.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's probably accurate. I mean, I guess that's just sad, because what does it say about just personal responsibility and your obligation and your basic duty to your fellow citizens? Well,
especially when it's a crown corporation and we have no other options, right?
Yeah, and that's it. So, I mean, and I mean, my MLA is an NDP. She's probably well-meaning and stuff like that, but I could email her on what's she going to tell me, what I mean? And I can't really contact the government. So, yeah, I'm basically on my own in this. And this is where I bring my final point is that, Todd, you're pretty much all we have on this. So just please keep up with it and just keep asking these questions, because I think that'll just be the thing that, we'll stop talking about in a few days and just life will move on and nothing's going to happen. And
okay, David, thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate it.
Right on. Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Again, Crisis Management 101. Just wait out the storm, and eventually people will stop talking about it, and people will move on. Unfortunately, I think that it might be the modus operandi here for Nova Scotia Power. When all is said and done, was Nova Scotia Power going to be held accountable in any way? And what does that look like? What does accountability look like? Has anybody within their corporate ranks been reprimanded? Has anybody lost their job? Has anybody been chastised? What has happened here? What exactly is being done about all of this, besides Peter Gregg appearing before public accounts and getting a grilling from politicians? Okay, that's all well and good. We can live vicariously through the politicians asking these questions, but where is accountability, and what does accountability look like? I think that the company needs to do much more than it's doing. Whatever that looks like. 902-405-6000. What are your thoughts on all of this, folks? Again, 902-405-6000. Edward. Hello, Edward.
Oh, hi. Good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well.
You had a man there on Monday that specializes in trapping rats and mice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Those sticky glue traps. I'm not a big fan of those, but it doesn't say on the box how you humanely dispose of the rat or mouse. And I hope people just don't take the rat or mouse and throw them away in the garbage, thinking it's going to eventually die. But you got to kind of do the job yourself by humanely taking a stick and hitting the rat or mouse in the back of the neck, break their neck. And that's all pretty much for that. I don't I'm just want to make sure that they're humanely killed.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Appreciate the call.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care at 902-405-6000. Dawn, hello.
Good morning, Mr. Todd. How you feeling nowadays?
I'm well, yeah. You?
Mine's doing the job. My thing down below, the stimulator. Mine's doing really good.
Great.
And all that there. But anyway, here's one little point. I got a couple. And one, we go down from Shabukto, downtown, south end, north end, prepare for about an hour wait. There's no plan for digging up the road, stoppage, or anything like that. There's no one under control of it. I think there should be more control of it because you turn a corner, there's a stop sign for someone like a car. They're doing their job, but they can seem that they get not every street, but every second or third street dug up, and they got to do the work. But they think they could have a little bit more control from week to week when they do it, right? And the other, besides that, when they dig up a street or a trench, you know what? In the contracts, it should be that after a heavy rain or something, they should come back and put more gravel into it, because there's hole in there about anywhere from 6 inches to a foot deep after a rain fight, and that could go for about a month before they get it repaved again. And the other thing is too, some people are talking about. We have a certain person calling about the two kids, unfortunately. I think they should be, different stories coming to everybody's, coming from everybody. And I think the people calling in that used to work in the forest, I think they should calm down that, and all that there, because unless it's really, really the true story, you know what I mean? It's like the Facebook thing, right? I wish they come out with the law that anybody says anything, again, they should be charged for Facebook shenanigans, really. Because every time you talk to someone, not everybody, but when they go on Facebook, they got a different story, a different conclusion, and things like that there. And one more last thing. I see what Mr. Carney said about last Friday about the tariffs. He's going to do this, he's going to do that, he's on the high. And then Friday night or Saturday morning, the tariffs come on there. You get nothing to say about it. So, I mean, I don't, all this thing about when the election was on, he's trying to do this and do that, and whatever thing. And I see they're down in the States now to spend our tax dollars on trying to talk. It's so messed up. I don't know what it is, really. The ministers. But anyway, you have some good.
Okay, Don. Thanks for the.
And the Panthers are going to take in the 7th game.
Okay, pal. Thanks for the call, Don.
Thank you.
All right, take care, bud. 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
Hey, Todd. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I want to talk about our natural resources and going after them, man. I think if they can prove that it's safe, I think it's a no-brainer. We got to do it because we're in as the Premier said, we're in a bad financial place. But they got to change laws to protect the province before they let these companies do it. And I'm going to give you an example. So I used to deliver fuel before Maritime Fuels before they went out of business, and I used to do construction, a lot of construction fuel. So you got the gold mine in Moose River, and then the old gypsum mines up in the valley, up in Windsor Way. All those mines, when they're done, they're supposed to be reclaimed so they're safe, and so the public can use them. They're not just supposed to leave a mine, done, we're done with it, the land's raped, blah, blah, blah. But what these companies are doing, they'll go, for example, the gypsum mine, they have security guards still to this day, even though it's been closed for 15 years now, they still have security guards up there on the payroll, and they hire a construction company to come in there once a year and clean up make sure the culverts are all open, make sure there's no damage to the land, anything like that from weather. And they do this because as long as they spend a certain amount of money, they don't have to reclaim the land because they can still say it's an operational mine. Even though it's not, they're just spending the bare minimum so they don't have to spend the millions to reclaim the land. They're doing the exact same thing up in Moose River at the old gold mine. Those laws have to be changed if the government's going to do this, and they have to protect the people and the land before they let the mining companies come in and do this stuff.
Do you think that's happening, Mike?
I know it's happening.
I'm saying, do you think that the government's going to ensure that these companies adhere to these?
I hope they do, but I think if the Premier comes back in, it's a question that should be asked.
Okay.
I'm for it. I think we need the money. We really do. They can't just keep taxing us and expecting to pay for everything.
Yeah, for sure. But what about people's personal or private property and the fact that the government can override personal property owners when it comes to access to their land if they deem it necessary, or they'll allow companies to extract and to explore on their personal property? I think that's a serious issue, don't you, Mike?
Yeah, it definitely is. But that's not something that was just made up for them to do this. That's a law that's been in place for probably 100 years that you don't own the minerals on your land. The government does, and if they want to come for them, they can.
Well, I understand that, but if you're a private owner, if you have a large parcel of land and that's got value and what for whatever purpose you want to, you don't want this type of activity on your land, I think that's a legitimate concern that private citizens have, don't you?
Oh, 100%. And if they are going to flex that muscle, then they should definitely give the people not just the market value, but if, say, I was going to log this land for the next 100 years, then they should give you the revenue that you're going to lose to make your living. But yeah, that's a sticky situation, if you ask me, that part of it.
Yeah, for sure. And look, in order for this to be viable for industry, I think that the encroachment on private land is inevitable, and I think it's going to happen. And I think that people have legitimate concerns, particularly in Hants County and these three areas in which uranium development is being allowed for now, or exploration at the very least. I had a pretty compelling chat with Chad Potier yesterday, who organized a community meeting in Hants County over the weekend, which was very, very well attended, and they have a lot of legitimate concerns, in my opinion, about uranium that I hadn't really. It was eye-opening for me anyway, and I think that yes, we need the revenue, but we also need to consider the big picture as well, and that's the long-term impact on the environment and on these communities. I don't think that can be ignored, and I think that perhaps the government is not paying enough attention to this. What are your thoughts?
I agree 100%. Uranium is the one thing I'm thinking. We've got so much other, like just the natural gas alone. Like we've got a lot of other resources we can go after that aren't as tricky and maybe as dangerous. Yeah. So why not leave the uranium as a last resort?
Yeah.
Like natural gas, they've been doing it. Saskatchewan, Alberta, northern BC for years. Like it's pretty safe. They got it down pat. So why isn't that the first thing we're doing? Because we have enough natural gas in this province, they say, for 150 to 200 years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, the whole uranium, the
moneymaker.
The whole uranium mining seems to me to be quite dangerous. But anyway, thanks for the call, Mike. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
See you later.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us again. 902-405-6000. Getting some emails on the Nova Scotia Power thing here, and I'll read some of those and get back to your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, the way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Here's an email from Jennifer, then back to the phones. Jennifer says, given the cyber attack at Nova Scotia Power and social insurance numbers being stolen needlessly and putting customers at risk of fraud, I sure hope other organizations that store our info are implementing secure network infrastructure. My sons just applied for Nova Scotia Student Assistant Education Loans and had to enter their SINs and their parents because it's used to look up in CRA the revenue of individuals and parents as a factor in the loan process. Sure hope the SINs aren't stored in the Nova Scotia Student Loans government website. Should be only there for loan approval process, but they aren't. The account is made with your social insurance number. That's the login username. Wow. So they better be protecting that database. It's very concerning. It comes from Jennifer. And Jennifer, you're absolutely raising a great point, is that I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I really do. I think that hackers, as AI develops and their technology develops, I fear that organizations, certainly like government agencies, won't be investing in nearly the amount of money they should in cybersecurity, and likely banks and credit bureaus and who knows what. And again, once the penetration happens and it's look out, folks. I don't want to fearmonger, but I just think that this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to identity. And I don't know what the long-term fix is. Perhaps there isn't any. Perhaps this is just the reality that we're living in. Imagine having your social insurance number as a login username. Wow, that blows my mind. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Mark's giving us a call. Hello, Mark.
Oh, hey, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to switch things up a bit and go back to the e-scooters.
Yeah.
So I have lived in downtown Halifax for about 8 years now, but I do spend a lot of time in Dartmouth, like suburban Dartmouth. So that's sort of the context here. So I'm not like fully against the scooters, but living in downtown over the years, and I know this is a different company, but we've had scooters for a while there for a few years. I've seen so many near misses. I've been involved as a pedestrian in so many near misses. I've seen actual accidents. I've seen people abandon them. I've seen a lot of activity, which I just won't sugarcoat it, a lot of drunk people, okay, on them. Yeah. And so I'm curious as to enforcement. In the years that this has been going on, I one point saw an officer pull a bunch of kids that were just drunkenly weaving in and out. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. It'd be interesting to see how many citations or warnings have been given? I would say it's close to zero. And, I don't want to take away people's fun, and it is good, for the tourists and everything. But, it's considered a conveyance. You can't ride one of these things drunk or high. That is considered, you can actually be charged with a DUI on that.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I have never heard of anybody being charged. And like I said, anecdotally, I've only ever seen these kids get pulled over once. They were let go or whatever, which is fine. They were warned. But, this is a serious hazard, and it's not a matter of if or when. It has happened. People have been seriously hurt by these things already. Somebody is going to get killed. And I just don't know how to enforce it. But there needs to be enforcement, in my opinion. You don't see it as much in the suburban areas. It's sort of safer there. I'm not sure. Maybe there should be restrictions on where these things are allowed.
Well, I mean, look, on a daily basis, pretty much on my way in from Spryfield down Herring Cove Road and up through the roundabout, I see at least one of these scooters, and they're always weaving in and out of traffic with complete disregard onto the sidewalk, up off the sidewalk, all over the place. And I can't help but wonder, very, very dangerous, risky. I mean, you're standing up, you're moving at high speeds. I think that there could be a liability issue here when it comes to safety at some point.
Yeah, that's interesting, and maybe you could get somebody to look into, or you could look into like what kind of insurance. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know. I'm sure there must be waivers involved for the riders because. Yeah, I mean, they might hurt an innocent person, or they might hurt themselves, or kill themselves. Yeah. So I don't know. Something's got to be done about it. So I do now. As to whether Gloria's point about the city and stuff, I don't know. I have no idea. But it would be good to get some transparency on that as well. But I think the main issue for me is safety, and that's my thoughts. And then thanks very much.
Okay, Mark. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. There's 3 of them on Yonge Street right here that I see every day on the sidewalk. So they are on public property, and again, people jump in these things, and they appear to me to be quite dangerous for the rider, not let alone everybody else. You're in a stand-up position. You don't know if you ever. In some cases, people have never used these things. I don't know. I just see a recipe for all types of problems with these things. I know that the getting people out of cars is a priority, but I don't know that this is the answer. Perhaps. Anyway, what else you've got in your mind? Whatever else you have in your mind, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Sandra, hello.
Good day, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good, thank you. I was hoping maybe someone else had called in earlier about this, but concerning Nova Scotia Power and their current quagmire, I've been living in my current residence for 4 years, and I have an account with Nova Scotia Power. I am the sole person on the account. Back in May, I received a letter from Nova Scotia Power at my current address, but it was not addressed to me personally. It was addressed to another individual. So I did open the letter, and I apologize to everybody for doing that, but I opened the letter so I could find out what the letter was about. And this person who has lived at my residence prior to me had their information compromised, and it was a standard letter that I hear everyone else has, where they've offered to provide them credit protection. But my point is, how many thousands of people that no longer have current accounts with Nova Scotia Power are being sent letters to prior addresses? This poor soul doesn't even know their information was compromised.
Yeah, that's a good
point.
point.
And it just adds to this quagmire. I mean, at this point, Revenue Canada, if they have a social insurance number, Nova Scotia Power for this guy, are the only ones that could contact this person. It's just, I don't understand. And why would they even send a letter to someone knowing that I am the individual that holds the account at this address.
Yeah, that's
good. I just don't understand.
That's a good point, Sandra. So you never received a letter yourself?
No, and I didn't receive one myself addressed to me. No, this is a letter that was addressed to a prior resident in the apartment that I rent.
And you're a customer of Nova Scotia Power, obviously.
Yes, I am.
Okay,
yeah.
So do you feel confident that you're not included in this breach despite not receiving a letter?
Not at all.
Yep.
No, I have no confidence in anything that has happened. Yep. And concerning social insurance numbers, I think the federal government should really step in and, set some legislation that, aside from maybe, our chartered banks, that no one can even ask for a social insurance number, and of course your employer. But and how are these people? This is not the only individual I would imagine who had their info compromised, and they have no way of getting in touch with them. So they're sending letters to old addresses, people that don't even have accounts anymore.
Yeah,
Interesting,
Sandra. Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Paulette, hello.
Hello. Listen, Todd, I called you earlier. I'm upset over something. Drivers age 75 and older in Canada will need to follow new regulations starting July the 29th to 25 for their driver's license. They need to do license renewal. Seniors must renew their licenses annually. Medical driving tests. This includes vision check, congenitive, if I'm saying it right, COGNITUE, I think, screening, and physical fitness assessment to ensure safe driving in person's renewal. Remember, must be must be completed at a service center. Renewal must be completed at a service center with medical documents. Conditional license, some provinces introduced, like you can maybe drive in the daytime. Anyway, and it's 70 years old. It's every 2 years they're going to do it, that they have to do all this. Now, I don't know about you, Todd. They want this done by July the 29th, 2025. That's next month. I went down and checked. I have to wait approximately a year to get my eyes examined, and I have to go through my doctor. And my doctor, I have to wait until sometime in July to get in to see her to do a medical. Now, who's going to do the conjective COGNITUE screening? I do not know.
Paula, this is the first I've heard of this, to be honest with you. I've not heard of any of this before.
Well, it's true. It is true. I met another man. He said his father knows about it. But anyway, my point is, okay, I'm 76. I'm physically active. I help a lot of people out, shopping, whatever. I do volunteer work for Salvation Army and that. I have to drive there. So if I have to, they say I'm not, gotta pick out one of them. So anyway, so what am I supposed to do? Or other people, shopping, pills, hospital, food, doctors, dental, eye appointments. I mean, eye appointment a year. That means I won't be able to drive for a year. I mean, it's ridiculous. And like there's people like in their 70s helping their parents.
Okay, Paulette, again, I've not heard of this, but where are you getting your information from?
It was online on the news. It was on the news. Like I can't use computers, right? I don't know how, but on my phone I can go on and look at the news, and it was on last night. Now down at the eye appointment place, the girl who waited on me, she said yes, she did hear about that. So I called up the licensing place, and they put me to a woman, and I said, is this true? She said, yes, some provinces already got it in. We haven't got it in Nova Scotia yet. I said, what? I said, but it's the 29th. I said, this is ridiculous. And every year, Todd, I mean, you know how many people still work in their 70s because they can't afford to stay home?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I mean, why don't they go after, when they catch somebody for impaired, Make them do all that. Or anybody who's on drugs, make them do that. They legalize marijuana. Gee, you can smell it in a lot of places through Bridgewater. I mean, really? Hitting the old people? Now, what's that going to do for our more healthcare workers? Definitely. The doctor's office will be tied up for how long? For all these seniors. I think 70% of Bridgewater, not sure, are seniors. How are they going to get a doctor's appointment like that? Or an eye examination?
Okay, Paulette, I think you make a good point. We're going to have to look into this because I've not heard of this before, and so we'll look into it and see what we can come up with. I suppose it's all I can do at this point.
Oh, my God. And as far as the light and power, I think that's awful. I had called up and asked remember the mail people were on strike? I just called them up and asked, see if they received that I paid my bill, and I gave my number. Well, she wanted to know my birth date and that. I said, it's just a yes or no answer. Does it show I paid it? Anyway, and then I found out you won't be getting this month's power bill. They're going to wait until the next time it's due to give it to you. I think that's awful what's happening to people. And all this information, like, okay, people go online with their bank accounts and all this. I would not do that.
Okay, Paulette, you're a little all over the map at this point. I think you make that's okay. You raise a valid point about the driver situation, and we'll look into it because I've not heard of these changes. So let's look into it.
Let them do that with people at fault with accidents and stuff.
Okay. Thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Tim, hello.
How we doing?
Well,
Even as bad as the breach about information is, what is the security like in the operations? Can someone hack in and take control of the grid?
Well, that's it, eh? That's right.
We don't know, It's like if it was that easy for someone to breach the information, I don't have much confidence in the grid. Not that I had much confidence in the grid in the first place, but for an outside source to take over,
That's a great point.
Get rid of the power of Toronto, and we want $100,000 in Bitcoin or million, whatever, to free it up.
Yeah, and you can be assured that they're working on it, Tim. I would bet $1 million every day they're working on trying to compromise that, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's not only our power grid. That's power grids all over the world. And I will bet you dollars to donuts, it's not a black hat hacker. It's another country doing it.
Well, it could be, and also, Tim, the financial industry as well, and all the financial data that's stored.
Yeah.
I mean, the banking industry, the commerce industry, all of this can be. We're extremely vulnerable,
yeah.
And to me, this is where this is where we need to invest our money into when it comes to defense. Is there?
Yeah, I'm lucky in that my power is included in my rent, so Nova Scotia Power doesn't have anything on me. Now, as for the scooters going in and out of traffic, we can translate that to bikes too. There's just too many people not being responsible on the roads. And have you noticed that on these scooters, they have the helmets, but half the people don't even wear them?
No, that's right. That's right. I will say it's been my observation, Tim, and anecdotally, that generally people on bikes are kind of, I guess, following the rules, but these scooters, I mean, people are just in and out of traffic and all over the place. And it's just a disaster waiting to happen, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And there's no regulations. I'm not even sure if they're under the Motor Vehicle Act yet or not.
Yeah, probably not. Okay, Tim,
maybe get a hold of the transport minister and see what's going on there.
Sure. Thanks for the call.
Have a good day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, 902-405-6000. Look, as far as the senior woman who called talking about rules coming into effect July 1st or whatever it was concerning the requirements to drive and you need medicals and on it goes, I found nothing online anywhere that backs that up whatsoever. And I would think that would be something that would be hugely topical if it were happening. So unless somebody can send me information showing otherwise, I would say that is fake news. I would use that term. But again, if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me by sending me a legitimate government source information or somewhere that's legit? Because a Google search, we've not found anything. And I've not heard anything about all this. So I just want to put it out there for people who might be concerned that it's happening or you're starting to scramble. Don't worry about it would be my message right now because, and again, if I'm wrong, somebody please let me know with some legitimate information. Yeah, if somebody received letters or whatever, then we would have heard about it, I would think. So I just wanted to quell those concerns right out of the gate. 902-405-6000. Let's talk to Kurt. Hello, Kurt.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Oh, great. Another sunny day. I just wanted to try and link scooters and the information issues. I'm one of the ones that got the Nova Scotia Power letter as well. And it's about how you do these things. As you know, there's Bird is a new contractor for providing those bikes and scooters in Halifax, the blue ones that everyone's talking about. And the day after they placed them, I was driving took the McDonald Bridge, and there were all kinds of them just laying around, almost like somebody wanted to scatter them and make them different. But I want to say that I think a little bit more research should have been done before they entered. I was in Toronto, and they have another bike outfit, scooter outfit. I think it's called Tangerine. But the way you pick those bikes up is you have to go to a specific rack, and they're strategically located around Toronto. You have to do whatever you do to pay for it and put the credit card, and then they're unlocked from that rack, and you're charged per minute that you have them. And the key difference is you can't just go and drop them on a sidewalk or drop them anywhere. To stop the charge going to your card, they have to be returned. And if it's over an hour, there's a penalty and a premium rate that's paid. So they have a system where, there's a built-in incentive. If I don't want to keep being charged, I can't just rent the bike and drop it off anywhere on anyone's lawn, driveway, or whatever. And this was an RFP that was requested. There's great hullabaloo that it wasn't a Halifax company, but I think that's a way that could be done. If I could, I wanted to make another point linking to credit. When I was there, I went over to Toronto Islands, which is an incredible place in the city, and tried to rent a bike there. And I noticed a sign up saying, to rent a bike, you must leave your credit card or driver's license with us, not show us ID or anything. And of course, I refused to do that. I've run into that before where people want to physically take my charge card or driver's license, and I go for a bike ride. And of course, they accept no responsibility for somebody using it. So I just wanted to make those couple of points, and I'd like to make, if you have a time, link to the TransUnion. I did call them if I could. Mm-hmm. I know I'm rambling from a number of points.
Oh, that's fine.
But, I finally got through and went and checked my credit score. But I don't think I'd like to start asking the question about these credit checking agencies and who's regulating or providing oversight to them as well, because they're collecting all this information. I don't know. I think they should appear before some committee. And you can go in and check your credit score. I've never had a loan in the past 20 years, and my score was low. The impact of that wasn't low; it was in the middle. Mm-hmm. I thought it should be much higher than that. But the impact of that is you get charged a higher interest rate when you go for a mortgage or a loan or something like that. And I'm saying, and the other thing, whenever, you're constantly being offered to sign up for new credit cards, that counts as a credit check, which drives your score up. And in whose interest is it to get a higher interest rate? It's in the banks or the lending agency. Yeah. And I wonder who holds shares or sits on their boards Is anyone looking out for us, the loan people? So these two private companies that control credit check, I don't know that anyone's checking on them, and is it all in the bank's interests to have people with lower scores and that kind of thing? So I went through a number of things, but I just want to offer those comments.
Okay, Kurt. Thank you for calling. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Ralph, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Hi.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a quick comment. I got through to Nova Scotia Power. I received a letter, and I asked a very simple question. What information do you have on me? Mm-hmm. Do you have my driver's license? Do you have my social insurance number? I've been with them. I've had this account for 40-some-odd years, and I really don't know what I gave them. The people I spoke to can't give me an answer. They bumped it up to somebody else. They don't call back. They could simplify all this stuff if they gave you where you may have a problem. I might not at all, but I received a letter. So what do you have on me? Do I cancel my payments? Do I change my banking information? Do I worry about my social insurance number? So they're not there. I mean, that would be so simple to ease people's minds. Tell them where there might be a problem. We have your driver's license. Yeah. We've done away with it.
Yeah.
However, it was there when we did away with it, or before we did away with it, or when they got hacked.
Yeah.
So, I'm frustrated with this. I've had to make several calls to get in there, like everybody else, and it's frustrating when the people in the front line can't help you, and the people above them are either too busy or they just don't care. It's a simple question: do you have my driver's license? Do you have my social insurance number when you were hacked?
And you weren't able to get you weren't able to get that information, Ralph? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm waiting. I've called twice now. The first time it was a week. Now I called again this morning, but I still haven't had a call back. And it's a matter of yes, we do, or no, we don't.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for anything personal.
Yeah.
Why should I go to the credit bureau if they don't have anything to worry about?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and you've not been able to talk to a representative of Nova Scotia Power to this point.
No, I haven't had the call back. I did get through to their
right,
customer service line.
Then they said leave your number and we'll call you back. Is that
exactly
the deal? Yeah, and no call back to this point.
No callbacks.
Wow. There's customer service 101, right?
Yep. Well, it's not the people at front line, though.
No, I get it. And that's the way it always is. Is the people taking the heat are the people who are the employees on the phone, and the executives run for cover in their ivory tower.
Yep. Not even looking for an executive, just a manager, and even they're not doing. Maybe they are extremely busy, but they should bump this up to the executives to say, let's let people know exactly what was compromised.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or what they have to worry about. Yeah. I don't have to worry about my credit if they don't have my credit card number or any of that information.
Yeah, well, Ralph, my guess is that they'll want to put off as much requests like that as they can, and just hopefully they hope that eventually people just stop calling and people stop asking, so they don't have to deal with it. Yep. That to me is what they're doing here.
Yep. Well. Anyways, call into the radios. You get good answers there. Do you have time for one more quick
No, actually, I am out of time, Ralph. I apologize. Thanks for the call, though, bud.
I'll call another day.
Okay, pal. Take care.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care, bud. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of you. I apologize. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. I'm sure that some of you will still want to be talking about this ongoing issue of Nova Scotia Power. Tariffs, another very serious story impacting our country. Aluminum tariffs, steel tariffs, 50% tariffs in the United States. What does this all mean? We'll talk to Robert Huish when we come back. All right, it's as if we didn't have enough to worry about or be concerned about when our economy, we have this ongoing trade war with the United States, and it has ramped up in a very, very serious way. 50% on steel and aluminum tariffs. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, calling them illegal. Joining us to get to the bottom of all of this is Robert Huish, Associate Professor at Dalhousie University in Halifax. Robert, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good afternoon, Todd. Good to talk to you.
Indeed. Okay, so my oh my, what else is next, right? I mean, this is something that I don't know that we understand the true. I shouldn't say we don't understand. I don't think that enough of us truly get, and myself included, how far-reaching this could impact our economy. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I think right now we're seeing that the upscaling of tariffs is really putting political points in Donald Trump's core base. So we're talking the MAGA supporters in Pennsylvania and particularly, and parts of the Midwest that would see some benefit in their mind of reducing foreign imports of steel into the United States. But that's about as far as it gets, because logistically and practically, this is not going to work. The thing with the steel tariffs is that Canada imports steel from the United States, and it's usually more of the lower grade stuff. We're talking rebar. We're talking like almost the pig iron kind of stuff. Yeah. Where the U.S. imports the more refined aluminum and other refined steel products from us. So if he's going to start increasing tariffs on steel, especially the higher end stuff, the question is, could those steel manufacturers in the U.S. retool their shops quick enough before Americans start paying more for those goods? And the answer is no. There's going to be a constant need for the products that Canada sends down. The prices will go up. There may be a stoppage of orders for future ones coming in, but that's just going to reduce their supply overall. And the one thing I'm getting some optimism from that we saw a few weeks back with all of the extreme tariffs that Trump put on China and then his talk with the United Kingdom is that in both cases, he did come down to a deal. And really, China and the United Kingdom didn't have to do anything. They just sort of sat there looking at them. And we saw that there are limits to how far these tariffs can go before he has to start backing down and call it a victory. So I think, Todd, right now, it's if you are in a steel producing economy in Ontario right now, it's high risk. It's certainly uncertain, because if there's stop work orders that come in, that doesn't just affect the shops. It affects real estate prices. It impacts the whole surrounding economy of many, many towns in Ontario. So it's high risk, but I do think there's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, but the light at the end of the tunnel at this point is not it's not evident as to when that might happen, and it's going to fall on Donald Trump will make that. Donald Trump has to be the guy that allows for this light to happen, is he not? It ultimately stops and starts with him, with his executive order power or not.
It definitely starts with Trump and his executive orders. It can stop with him. You're right. He can have a big mood swing tomorrow and put it down to the 10% tariffs if he wants, or a judge can tell him to stop it. And that's where Mr. Carney's language about it being illegal is correct, because some of the tariffs that have been put on hold or have been put on pause, it's the courts pressuring Trump to go back on his word. And this seems to be the most effective strategy that Canadians can go for at the moment, is by finding out if there are lawsuits in the United States that we can join as part of, that are there states and governors themselves that are pushing against this. And that seems to be the quickest immediate response that can happen. Reciprocatory tariffs against the U.S., that might not be the best thing that we can do to keep our prices under control, but we might want to think about what these longer-term solutions are to getting our export industry away from a U.S. market, bring it into European circles, start selling more within Canada, bring it to Asia. That's going to be the long-term game, but I know that's not really putting a lot of confidence in investors or workers right now.
Will Trump even recognize the court's decision, though?
He will probably try to counter it with an appeals court process and that sort of thing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the people who are collecting tariffs are your customs and borders and excise officers at the border. And when they show up for work one day, whatever the set of orders is from a judge or for a president to say, collect this or don't, that's where it really comes down to. And, whoever gets that marching order to the border is going to be the winner in the end. But again, a judge has to agree with it. A judge has to see it as being immoral. And right now, these things like steel and softwood and dairy are still open for that kind of tariff abuse. And if a judge doesn't say, oh, no, there's nothing illegal about it, then it carries on.
How effective might counter tariffs be, and what are perhaps some of the downsides to counter tariffs?
Yeah, counter tariffs are tricky because if we start imposing those on products that we can't quickly substitute and that we're really dependent on, it's just going to put the financial hurt on more Canadians. So with counter tariffs, they can work if we want to be symbolic about it on key industries. But the more that we put the pressure on counter tariffs that already hit counties, especially Republican voting counties in the U.S., to say, this is our strike back at you, it's not likely to sway political pressure in that state away from Trump. In fact, it could reinforce it. And I speak to that when you look at the use of economic weapons around the world. Usually you don't see the imposition of a tariff put on somebody or put on a group of people saying, you're right, we should change our ways. The mere talk of tariffs or sanctions in some cases tends to rally people around their own home team as opposed to providing any sort of affinity with those who are issuing the tariffs in the first place.
Okay, so when it comes to the long-term viability of the industry here in Canada, what are your thoughts on all of this? And we know that there's going to be some job layoffs, and there already are layoffs. And the longer this thing goes on, if it's protracted in any way, then I would think scaling back up your operations after you lose some talent and your operation, I would think that the longer this goes, the harder it is to scale it back up. Is the point? Do you agree or disagree with any validity to that, or what's your take on that?
No, I think that's a good analysis, Todd, because you're right. The minute you start sending people out the door, it becomes easier to just move or replace that operation with somewhere else. And unless we can get really serious really fast about opening trade networks that are outside of the U.S. and the infrastructure to get that product to those networks, we could probably see a lot of this knocking on the door. And if it happens enough, again and again, with various industries, then we're talking recession. And that's something that Mr. Carney needs to get right ahead of and think big. Like if we need to open up ports in northern Manitoba to get product to a more global market, so be it. If we need to start investing in transportation networks that go east-west across the country to get things to, say, Europe quicker, we need it. I mean, steel is really, really important because there's so many places in the world that are short of it. You have Russia being a big steel producer, but they're sanctioned. China requires aluminum and steel at an enormous pace. They can't produce it themselves. Brazil is another big actor, too, in that. So there are markets. The problem is they're all far away. And if we don't have that infrastructure to get those goods there quickly, then we're probably going to lose out in that competitive edge.
Wow. Very interesting. Thanks so much, Robert. I appreciate your insight as always, and let's do it again.
Let's do it again, Todd. Looking forward to it.
All right, take care. Robert Huish, Associate Professor at Dalhousie University in Halifax. I saw this release from the Montreal Economic Institute, and it's quite interesting. Nova Scotia Health is one of only 2 health departments in the country to have failed to respond to a Freedom of Information request demanding data on wait times at the province's emergency rooms, and we'll discuss this when we come back. Nova Scotia Health is the only one of 2 health departments in the country to have failed to respond to a Freedom of Information request demanding data on wait times at the province's emergency rooms, denounces the MEI. The MEI published its report on emergency room wait times this week across Canada. It shows that the median length of a stay in emergency rooms ranges from 2 hours and 45 minutes in Newfoundland and Labrador to 5 hours and 23 minutes in Quebec. Joining us to talk about all of this is Emmanuelle Faubert, MEI economist who authored the study. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so first off, MEI, tell us about MEI. You guys are a think tank, is that correct?
Exactly. We are the Montreal Economic Institute. We are a think tank specialized in public policy and looking into free market solutions that will bring more prosperity to the country.
All right, so obviously this is important information and relevant information and information that the public would be curious about, but Nova Scotia has not cooperated. Tell us more about this.
Well, exactly. So on January 13, we made an access to information request, which is so it is legally the province has to send us information within 30 days. However, it can be extended by an extra 30 days. But still, it's been over 140 days, and we still do not have that data.
Okay, and are you going to continue to press for the data?
Definitely, we have made a formal complaint to the Commissioner of Information, and we are in the process of trying to get this information.
Okay, and I guess you can only speculate as to why they don't want to provide it, and that the news wouldn't be good, right? That is I think, a safe assumption, and people will speculate, and I think rightfully so.
You're totally right. It's kind of ironic that we have to wait so long to get information about wait times in Nova Scotia. But even though we don't have the data yet, Nova Scotians know it. It takes a long time to wait in the emergency room, and these wait times are getting longer.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the data that we do have when it comes to the rest of the country. What are some of the more interesting standouts when it comes to information and data here when it comes to wait times?
So we see some trends that are present all across the country. One of them being that wait times and length of stay in the emergency room have increased in every single province over the last 5 years. No province has gotten better. And so we're seeing that these wait times not only increase, but these are indicative of other issues. For example, the change in demographics. We see population is aging, which means that the demand for healthcare services increases. We see an increased difficulty to access primary care. Let's be real. Everybody knows it's difficult to get access to a family doctor. Even when you have one, it is hard to get an appointment. And third issue that we see is a lack of alternatives when it comes to minor emergencies. If you have, for example, a broken arm, you cannot just go to your family doctor because it will take time to have an X-ray and everything. It will take too long. It's still an emergency. But if you go to the ER, you'll wait hours, if not the whole day. So these are underlying issues that can be some of the causes for what we see in the emergency room.
Yeah, what other causes might there be? What else is at play, do you think?
Oh, that is one. And also an issue that we see is that for decades, when we see issues in the healthcare system, what we do is we increase the money spent on healthcare. We know the demand increases, so yes, we need to increase money. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that despite spending so much money on healthcare, these issues are not fixed. So we need to look at what is being done elsewhere around the world that works and could help us reduce wait times.
Okay, and again, in Nova Scotia, you're going to continue to press for this information, I'm assuming?
Definitely. I am currently in touch with the Commissioner of Information, and we should get that data soon.
Okay, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, take care. That is Emmanuelle Faubert of the Montreal Economic Institute economist who authored the study in which Nova Scotia has not provided the information for, which is, I think, telling and actually kind of disappointing, if not completely disappointing. Why not provide the information? All right, you've heard of the Big Story podcast. We produce the Big Story podcast on a daily basis, and you can access it on the Seeker app or download it anywhere where you get your podcasts. And Dan Alstrand, our one and only Dan Alstrand, is hosting today's Big Story podcast again. Check it out on the Seeker app or download it anywhere you get your podcast. And he's talking about the fact that it's been over a month now since Jack and Lily Sullivan went missing from their home in Pictou County. The case, of course, has caught the attention of Nova Scotia people across the country and around the world. And the case of the missing Sullivan children is the focus of today's Big Story podcast, again hosted by Dan Hallstrand. And you can check it out on the Seeker app. That's SEEKR, or download it anywhere you get your podcasts. And it's a sad, sad story for sure. And Dan does a great job talking about it. So check it out, again, anywhere where you get your podcasts. There will not be a federal election. Thank goodness for that. At least not anytime soon. At least not this week. The government's reply to the throne speech was adopted in the House of Commons yesterday. It was adopted on division, meaning no recorded vote was held. It does not need a vote in the Senate. Leader of the government in the House of Commons, Steve McKinnon, said on social media that the adoption of the speech sets the stage for a strong and focused agenda. Earlier yesterday, interim NDP leader Don Davies said the NDP MPs would vote against the government's throne speech after a caucus meeting. Davies said that 1.2 million Canadians sent New Democrats to Parliament to advocate for working families, and those priorities aren't reflected in the speech. Davies went on to say the speech offers few details about the government's plans for health care and housing. So thankfully, it did manage to get through, and the throne speech was not defeated, and that would have been a disaster, because who the hell wants another election, right? I certainly don't, and I know that most of you listening don't. But it's a reminder, of course, that we indeed are in a minority government situation. And you wouldn't know it by the way Mark Carney kind of behaves, and this government kind of acts like they've got a majority. They have a very, very strong minority. They're very close to a majority government, but they don't have it. And this is going to come again in the fall with the budget and other confidence motions. They're going to have to get support from somebody somewhere. And this is going to be a continued theme, I think, in the coming months, and hopefully years before we have another election. But it's a reminder, again, of course, that this is not a majority government. And with politics, things can change in a hurry, and often do. And look, we shall see. The Conservatives certainly don't want an election. I know the NDP don't want an election either. They knew that this was a political game. They knew that it would pass without their support. And you've got the Bloc, of course, and what they're going to do and what their agenda is. And again, the Conservatives, without their leader, Pierre Poilievre, in Parliament yet. And a by-election, by the way, for Pierre Poilievre to get a seat, I was talking to Dan about this yesterday, it's cost about $1 million. $1 million for a by-election so that Pierre Poilievre can get his seat. This is somebody who lost in the last election in a riding that he held for 20 years. And taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill for to the tune of about $1 million to hold a by-election in Alberta so that he can get his seat and get back in the House of Commons. By the way, a riding that was already a Conservative seat and held by a Conservative MP who stepped aside to pave the way for Pierre Poilievre to run again in the by-election and again to return to Parliament. So it costs about $1 million, folks. Oh, and by the way, Pierre Poilievre, of course, is still staying in the official opposition residence in Ottawa, which is nice for him. Free accommodation, nice spot, and the perks that go with it. Not a bad deal. All right, this story. Tim Houston pitches a project that could make Nova Scotia an energy superpower. It's called Wind West. We'll talk about all this with Larry Hughes when we come back. All right, Premier Tim Houston released some details on a plan to make Nova Scotia a clean energy powerhouse in the foreseeable future. However, he did not disclose any costs. Joining us to discuss all of this is Larry Hughes, Dalhousie University engineering professor whose area of expertise includes energy systems and climate change. Larry Hughes, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure, Todd.
All right, so I guess first, before I get to this, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Nova Scotia Power and its cyber breach woes and all that goes with it. Any kind of thoughts in general you wanted to share on this whole story?
Fortunately, I didn't get a letter, and my heart goes out to those people who did, because there'd be a great deal of concern. I really don't know what to say. I mean, other than they politely putting it, they screwed up.
Yeah.
And perhaps some good will come out of it, and they will improve, and other utilities around the country will improve from this. I mean, I can't really think of much else.
Right. I guess from the side of it being a monopoly, and there's been a lot of conversation about potentially breaking the monopoly that is Nova Scotia Power. Is that realistic in any way, shape, or form, in your opinion, Larry?
Well, it's taking place before our eyes right now. As you know, yesterday, one of my students and I had an article published in the Herald, and we talked about basically what you just mentioned there, the breakup of Nova Scotia Power. Mm-hmm. Nova Scotia Power consists of a number of components. Of course, the generation side, the transmission and distribution, and also the sale of electricity to its customers. There is an overarching control system over this in Ragged Lake that decides which power stations come online, which are not used, and so on, as the electricity usage varies throughout the day. This is being changed with it's a mouthful, the Nova Scotia Independent Energy Systems Operator, or NSIEO, and the NSIEO, will basically be running the electricity system. Nova Scotia Power will still have some generation. They will still look after, as Scott Balfour called it, the poles and wires, so that's still in their purview. But the idea behind this, and this is what the Premier has been pushing for, is more independent power generators will be coming online. More, for example, wind producers, and which was one of the arguments. Nova Scotia Power was playing favorites and not letting these groups come online. So the idea is the NSIEO will be controlling this. So as my student Hassan and I wrote, it's not going to be the same power company. And when things go wrong, it's really going to be the NSIEO who you should be calling, because they're deciding where the electricity comes from, Nova Scotia Power, its generation, or independent power producers, or Muskrat Falls, or offshore wind, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a few moments. Yeah. But Nova Scotia Power is being stripped in some respects of the I don't want to say the crown jewels, but perhaps the most important part of it, and that is deciding who comes online when, and that's their control center. And so there is a huge change coming, and it's already started. Nova Scotia Power isn't deciding who's coming on, who will be the generators, the new wind generators and solar generators. This has been decided by the NSIEO. And so, yes, that was one of the Premier's many changes to Nova Scotia Power.
Okay, so what does that mean for Nova Scotia Power's bottom line and its ability to return investment to its shareholders and the business model in and of itself?
That's a really good question, and nobody's elaborated on that. And when I was at the shareholders meeting online a few weeks ago, and I wanted to ask questions, but for some reason I wasn't able to. But that was one of the questions: what's going to happen to shareholder value? Mm-hmm. You are basically taking a lot. You aren't letting Nova Scotia Power generate electricity they didn't want to generate. You're going to have someone else doing this. The other question on that is Nova Scotia Power, as as it will just be a power generator, it has an 80% renewables target. And if it can't reach it because it's only running, for example, natural gas or oil plants, or generating facilities, if it's only running those, it's not, I mean, it would be harder for them to reach the 80% target. I mean, they're already struggling now to maintain the 40% target. So that doesn't appear to have been thought through by the province. So there's, to my way of thinking, there's a lot of questions that are unanswered, but we are just barreling ahead.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about Wind West and what the Premier is floating the idea of Wind West. How realistic is it to create energy that would produce 66 gigawatts of power and get transmission lines and a cable to export it to markets west and the rest of the country? How realistic is this?
I've taken some notes about that. One thing that comes to mind, I jotted down another fever dream because back in 2022, September 2022, the Premier announced that the province was going to be an international leader in offshore wind and green hydrogen development. Well, unfortunately, green hydrogen development has died, at least for the foreseeable future, because green hydrogen is not front and center on the minds of the Germans, of the Europeans. They have enough problems as it is without worrying about green hydrogen. So, and we've seen it in Stephenville with GH2 and the fellow Risley. They're no longer pursuing the green hydrogen. I mean, they want to use their wind turbines basically for what the Premier is talking about, and that is to generate electricity, renewable electricity, green electricity, for things like data centers.
Okay, so again, is there a business plan or business model that would and when it comes to investment, the province, the federal government, I'm sure that you would need God knows how much money would be required in order to develop this type of wind farm. Do you think that the investment's there?
Not at this moment. It does not appear to be that way because a number of offshore wind proposals just found themselves to be so expensive in the offshore New England that they have had to pull out. That doesn't mean that things won't change in a few years. I mean, there's both the expense and the proverbial supply chain issues that are not giving the equipment to the builder when it's required. And with respect to this, the thing you have to keep in mind is offshore wind is where they're talking about putting some of these wind turbines is going to be very expensive, in part, well, primarily because of how the offshore wind turbine is connected to the seabed. You can have what are referred to as monopiles, which is essentially a pile driver putting in a huge, probably up to 10-meter diameter pipe into the ground on top of which the turbine is placed. But this is for shallow, up to about 50 meters, say about 150 feet. Beyond that, you start having to use floating wind turbines. And floating wind turbines are, as the name suggests, a wind turbine on a platform that floats. And the platform itself is connected to the seabed. It's anchored to the seabed. And there's various ways of doing this. The one that many of your listeners may recall is some of the offshore drilling rigs would be semi-submersible, and they would have these very large floats around the outside caissons that would allow the offshore drilling rig to be transported on site for drilling. So the technology's there, but the technology is incredibly expensive, and the dominant cost becomes for the semi-submersibles and other types of floating wind turbines are the foundations, and that is, for example, in the semi-submersible case, you would have the floats and the cables. So, and that's far more expensive, probably about 2.5 times more than the monopile being drilled into the ground, and about 10 times more expensive than an onshore. So there's going to be a very large expense there. So that's one issue. Assuming that can be overcome, you would then have the problem of, well, how do we get the electricity to market? Right. Because I mean the 5 gigawatts that the province wants, as we've discussed and I've written about, is more than twice what Nova Scotia Power or whoever's generating electricity in the province is supplying to Nova Scotians. So it's about anywhere up to about 26 terawatt hours, and the province uses about 11. So where does that electricity go? Well, another one of my students, Michael Godwin, he looked at using subsea cables, and I think we may have talked about this as well, running to La Romaine for Hydro-Quebec and down to Boston to supply the New England market. And he showed it could be done. I mean, it varies by season and demand and so forth. The Premier talked about basically going further west than just, he does talk about New England and Quebec in his 3.5-minute video. I think he mentions Quebec. Anyway, he shows at least the group they're funding to look at this is looking at onshore cable transmission lines, which strikes me as very strange that you'd be running onshore because you're going to be going through several different jurisdictions and you will have different environmental regulations and different pushback from groups and so on. What struck me was, based on the work Michael looked at, was, well, why not run the subsea cable or submarine cable through up St. Lawrence, so you could, and you would have spurs to Hydro-Quebec in Quebec, and then on into Lake Ontario and supplying Ontario. So I think there are probably more interesting ways of doing it than simply saying, well, we'll build more above-ground transmission lines, because that raises another question, and that, of course, is Quebec has suffered through ice storms many times in the past, knocking out the transmission grid. Why would you want to run more transmission grids through an area that suffers from ice storms, especially in a time of climate change where you may be getting more extreme weather events, as Nova Scotia's experienced with Hurricane Fiona a couple of years back, snapping power poles and the rest. Well, we've had other hurricanes or the remnants of hurricanes as well. So that it strikes me that there are ways of getting the electricity from here that would make sense. But they're talking about, if the Premier gets to his 66 gigawatts installed, I think that's wildly optimistic, because there are going to be legitimate questions raised about where are you going to be putting the turbines, and from the fishing industry, from people concerned about offshore birds and marine life, so forth, perhaps even tourism.
Okay, Larry, listen, I'm just out of time. I got to boogie, but I think we covered the territory that was needed, and well said as always. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. See you.
All right, take care. Larry Hughes, Dalhousie University's engineering professor. Lennie Gallant has a new album coming out and a summer tour. We'll chat with Lennie when we come back. All right, that is, of course, the Lennie Gallant, the iconic maritime artist. It's Counting on Angels, and he's releasing his latest LP, Shelter from the Storms, tomorrow. Lennie Gallant joins me here in studio. Lennie, a privilege.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well. Yourself?
I'm pretty good.
That's awesome. So you've been at this for quite a while now. This isn't your first go-around, is it?
That's what they tell me, yeah. No, it's I think it's album number 16, so yeah.
Yeah. And you record in both languages, French and English, quite a bit, eh?
Well, yeah, I grew up in English. I didn't, even though I'm Acadian, I didn't speak French when I was really young. But over the years, I decided to try to get the language back, and I kind of used music to do that.
Yeah.
I was sitting next to Donald Tarleton from Donald K. Donald at the Junos one year, and he knew I was Acadian. He said, we should make a French album, and I didn't tell him at the time I didn't speak French that well.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, okay, let's do that. And so I ended up writing an entire French album with the help of a lot of friends, and that kind of was my an impetus for getting the language, back. And since that time, I work with my partner Patricia Richard, and we have a francophone duo called Sirene Matelot. So if I do French stuff, it's under that name, and under Lennie Gallant, it's my English stuff.
Nice. So how would you describe this album, this 16th album?
How would I describe it? It's an album that kind of reflects the times in some ways. Shelter from the Storms. There's a lot of storms out there, I think, and not just the physical kind that are happening in the world. And a few songs, such as Counting on Angels, I think reflect that a little bit, like people trying to see where they fit into the world and with what's going on. But I think most of the songs are about connections, connections between individuals. There's some love songs on there, connections with the planet, and how to deal with difficult times, how we get through it, and the general feeling from people who've heard it seems to be that it's a very uplifting album. It's a very positive album, and that makes me feel real good.
Yeah, for sure. And, of course, you're touring. You got a lot of dates, including at the Carlton. You got a run of 4 or 5 shows at the Carlton in June and all across, crisscrossing the country. And here in the Maritimes, lots of other spots as well. You're out to Vancouver, your hometown of Rustico, PEI, Lunenburg. I mean, the travel, you love to travel, eh? It's part of the thing. You can't get that out of your bones, can you?
Whether you love it or not, it's part of the business. Yeah, we are doing a show from Vancouver Island to Cape Breton Island and in all parts in between. And yeah, we're doing 4 shows at the Carlton. 3 are sold out, and there's only and the last show, which is a matinee, it's about half sold now. So there's a few tickets left, so people need to get moving on that one.
Yeah. So how rewarding is it still? I mean, it never gets old, eh? Going out there and performing, I'm sure that it never gets old, right?
I love playing my songs for audience, especially when we got new stuff to present, and it's wonderful to have a new album out there and be ready to get on stage with new songs and share them with people. That's why I do what I do, to be able to share music, and so it feels great when that happens.
Yeah, for sure. Over the years, has your style changed, or have you evolved, or how would you describe your trajectory as an artist?
I like to think I get better at what I do.
Sure.
I think I'm a better songwriter now than when I started, in a way. But and you're always trying to put new elements into your albums. I think each album it sounds a little different, and I have over the years I've garnered a lot of friends that I've asked to come and help out. I got basically my core band is on this album. Mm-hmm. My partner Patricia, her son Julian on the piano, who I refer to as the Conor McDavid of the piano, mm-hmm. and my violin player Keelan Wedge, and then a raft of people that I've come to know to fill out the sound in the studios.
The business side of the business, it must be getting more difficult, I would think, in this day and age, in order to keep afloat and to make ends meet. Maybe not. What can you tell me about the business side?
Oh, there's no question. It's in the news all the time how musicians are having a very difficult time because, unfortunately, they took CD players out of cars, which didn't help at all. And so it's hard to sell physical albums, but we have the album out on vinyl, of course. Mm-hmm. People are getting into vinyl, And there's still a lot of people who do have CD players, thank God. And all my music is on streaming platforms, which, as you know, don't really pay the artist.
Yeah, that's right.
But I do encourage people to listen to them because I want people to know the songs and to get familiar with them and hopefully come out to the shows.
Yeah, and recording is really, like you said, the impetus and the jumping off point to performing, right? They go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. You got to get out there and perform. In the past there was always these artists who thought, well, I'll just record and I won't tour, but that's not so easy to do anymore.
Yeah, the whole industry's changed, right?
Yeah.
But that's all well and good. It sounds like you're doing a great job and evolving with the industry. And thank you so much for the CD. This is a CD, is it?
That's it.
All right. I don't know if I've got a CD player, but I think I've got one that I can dust off. Nonetheless.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But if people want to know more about it, or they want to download it, or whatever, direct people to your website where all things Lennie Gallant that they can find out the tour dates and all the good things that go with it.
LennieGallant.com will tell you everything you need to know, and you can order LPs there, you can order vinyl there, T-shirts, whatever you want, and it'll tell you where all the shows are happening. LennieGallant.com.
Okay, Lennie, thanks for coming in. It's a real privilege to meet you, my friend.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. It's Lennie Gallant, and the album is called Shelter from the Storms. It's available tomorrow. Check out Lennie Gallant online. Again, all the tour dates, including the Carlton, and he said that I think there's one show left that's not sold out, but you can check him out in Lunenburg and other parts of the province as well. So thanks to Lennie Gallant. Thanks to Vanessa Van Ness as well on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. See you then.